Again, thank you so much for joining us for Market-Based Approaches to Seed Aid in Fragile Contexts. This is a collaborative, interactive consultation co-hosted by the Market Systems Development Technical Working Group of the Refugee Self-Reliance Initiative, or the RSRI, along with ISSD Africa. So because we have a diversity of participants and from different backgrounds and contexts joining us today, we're going to go ahead and start with a brief introduction of both the Refugee Self-Reliance Initiative and ISSD Africa to just kind of lay the groundwork for the rest of the session. So Sasha, if you'll go to the next slide, thank you. I will introduce the Refugee Self-Reliance Initiative. So the RSRI was born because of an issue that the refugee crisis is outpacing solutions in the humanitarian and development sectors. Millions of people have been left without opportunities to provide for themselves and rebuild their lives with the current care and maintenance model of humanitarian aid, and with displacement growing across the globe as climate change increases and conflict increases. And we see that many refugees are living in a protracted state of displacement for many, many years, with less than 3% able to access durable solutions such as repatriation, resettlement, or legal integration. We know that we need a different way of doing things, a different approach, a different solution to this massive issue. Next slide, please. Sasha, could you please change the slide? Thank you. So again, as we can see, the humanitarian system is not fit for purpose. We need a different approach, and ideally one that enables refugees to be able to rebuild their lives, support themselves and their communities, contribute to their broader society using their skills and talents with dignity and agency. So the way we define self-reliance is the social and economic ability of an individual, a household, or a community to meet its essential needs in a sustainable manner and with dignity. Next slide, please. So that being said, there is limited evidence and data on what self-reliance programming works best in different settings and how this impacts households and communities and their ability to meet their essential needs in a sustainable manner. We know that there's few collaboration opportunities across, different contexts and different types of stakeholders to be able to really learn and share perspectives and best practices. A huge barrier is very restrictive policy environments in many countries that deny refugees the right to work, access social services, including healthcare and education, freedom of movement, all of these things, and that impacts the ability for people to achieve self-reliance. And then there are restrictive funding practices. Again, this care and maintenance model that's really short-term emergency aid, but that doesn't really engage development actors appropriately or build refugees' ability to become self-reliant. Next slide, please. So that is where the Refugee Self-Reliance Initiative comes in. The RSRI is a multi-stakeholder collaboration. We have over 350 organizations engaged in our community of practice, and we have three main pillars of work. So we are a learning hub. We uplift self-reliance learning through measurement, research, analytics, and commit to sharing knowledge across our community, across our broader network. We also have our self-reliance index measurement tool, the SRI tool, which contributes to a lot of this learning as a tool that's used by practitioners around the world to measure self-reliance. We're a global convener, so we have our community of practice, again, with over 350 organizations, where people can collaborate and exchange knowledge and resources related to refugee self-reliance. And then finally, we're a multi-stakeholder collaboration. So we use our power as a network, as a community, to come together with evidence to influence policies through advocacy and funding influence, and in order to promote self-reliance outcomes on this broader, more systemic level. I think that is all for the RSRI slides, but if you have any questions, I'll put my email in the chat if you want to get involved, as well as the link to join our community of practice. And I'll hand over to ISSD Africa to present on their organization. Thank you so much.
Hi, thanks so much, Ali. I'm Kristen Lambert. I'm a technical director at Mercy Corps supporting ISSD Africa and a range of our other programs. So just to share a quick note on ISSD Africa, that's the Integrated Seed Sector Development Africa project. It's really an international community of practice that's been around since 2012. Its main mission is to drive innovation and development in the seed sector across Africa with the goal of improving farmers' access to quality seed. So in this current phase of ISSD Africa, there's a particular focus on fragile and conflict-affected areas and the HDP nexus. So the aim is really to strengthen links between humanitarian aid, long-term development, and peace-building efforts through the lens of seed systems. This is taking place through 4 action learning projects, which you see highlighted here at the right. I won't go into too much detail, but just say these are being moved forward by a consortium of partners over the next few years, with activities taking place in a range of countries across sub-Saharan Africa primarily. Next slide, please. And the work we're discussing today is part of the Mercy Corps-led learning project on seed business development in fragile contexts. And we're really focusing on that first question there. What market-based interventions are most effective in building seed sector performance and resilience in fragile contexts? So our aim is to better understand the kinds of market-based interventions that actually work in these challenging settings. And we're exploring that through desk reviews, which we'll share a little bit about today, interviews and conversations with implementing partners, like this one happening with all of you. Looking ahead, we also plan to bring in more private sector voices to hear their perspectives and better understand what drives or discourages their willingness to engage in these contexts. We also have a range of tools and resources, other peer learning events that are on the horizon, and we'd love to stay engaged with all of you. So I'd encourage you, if you could, check out that site after the webinar and sign up for the newsletter, and you can receive updates about where we're at and ways to engage in the future. All right, that's all from me, and I'll go ahead and turn it back to Sasha.
Thank you very much, Kristen and Ali. And welcome, everybody. Good morning, good evening, depending on where you are in the world. As has been mentioned, we have a very diverse audience on this call. So before we dig into the topic, I want to take a brief moment to get a sense of who we have on the call. So Ali, if you can please put up, Ali is going to put up a poll, and please check to the best, as best you can, which of these areas of expertise or an implementation do you think best fits you? And I know it's not a perfect match, but pick which one best describes you. Or if none of them work, please click on other and put your expertise in the chat, and we can get a sense of who we have, what type of people we have on the call. And we'll wait a minute to see how, for a few more people. We've got about 60% have responded, so we're getting close. Okay, Ali, you can share, or actually I can do that. So we have, I think about 30% of you consider yourself market-based programming implementers. And then about 20% are agriculture experts. We have some seed people, some humanitarians, some refugees, so a nice mix. So thank you and welcome, everybody. So let me talk a little bit about why we asked you to join us today. As Kristen mentioned, ISSD Africa is producing a paper on market-based approaches to seed security in fragile and conflict-affected states. And as we delved into this topic, we realized there's already a ton of guidance out there on this subject. There are literally thousands of pages on guidance on very specific approaches. There are a lot of good program examples. But despite all, and we tried very hard not to duplicate what's already out there. But despite all of this guidance, we still see in humanitarian responses in the same geography, we may have organizations doing large-scale distribution of seeds. At the same time, other organizations are supporting commercial seed retailers to sell their seeds. So we see there's confusion among the population we're trying to support. There's tension among implementers. And so what we tried to do with this paper is synthesize the range of intervention options that are available and provide some guidance on when and where they're appropriate, give program examples, and then link to these deeper guidance documents for people who are trying to implement in the field. And to contextualize this, we put all of these intervention examples into what's called the market-based programming framework. And I will explain a little more about that in a minute. But the core of this document that will be produced in the next month or two is a series of tables with examples of potential interventions, and that shares the advantages of them, some of their limitations, and also the things to consider and the key questions to ask when implementing these programs. And this is what we want to discuss today. We want to get your feedback on these examples and whether they work or not, and what you as experts think should be added or that you disagree with. But before we get into that and get into our breakout groups, because we have such a diverse group, let me talk a little bit about the framing so that everybody is on the same page. So this is what we call the market-based programming framework. And market-based programming is an adaptation of market systems development thinking applied to crisis contexts. And this diagram shows the range of market-based programming available, moving from immediate humanitarian assistance to rebuilding more effective, equitable, and resilient systems. And it shows what interventions can be used to support the supply and demand for key goods and services. So that is if you look at the purple and red sections of the schematic, those are the intervention options. This schematic also acknowledges that it's crucial to understand what the supporting functions are, such as services and infrastructure, that enable the system to function. And that's the green section at the bottom of the diagram. And also it recognizes that there is an institutional environment and rules and norms that govern how the system functions. And that's the blue section at the top of the diagram. But the center of the diagram is this, is the intervention. So if you start moving at the center of the diagram, moving outwards, we are moving from the core of an immediate crisis response, often a humanitarian response, out to longer term resilience. And this is done in the MVP framework using a series of levels. You can see the red and purple colors getting darker. So at the core, the first level are activities that use markets to provide key goods and services. So this is often what's considered a humanitarian response. The next level out is supporting markets to reestablish supply chains and services, to support market actors, and to build capacity so that markets can survive the crisis and continue to support the population. And the outer band are longer interventions, often multi-sectoral, that facilitate changes in the system necessary so that these markets can serve people without us. So how does this relate to seed security? What we did is took this MVP framework and we grouped all of the seed aid interventions that we found by these levels of using markets, supporting markets, and market system change. And you'll see from this schematic that we put the supply and demand interventions together. And that's because we realized that for many of these approaches can address both supply and demand, and many of the programs are actually doing both at the same time. So it made more sense to just put them into a single set of categories. What we also acknowledge in this diagram is that seed aid is often a part of larger humanitarian response or agriculture development programming. So while we're just talking about activities supporting availability, accessibility of seeds, in fact, these interventions may be helping other parts of farmer activity. There may be other complementary interventions working on the agriculture system, but we're going to focus on seeds today. And so let's walk through a couple of examples to make it clearer. So a classic example of using markets to support seed security is contracting local suppliers to distribute seed on behalf of an organization, or providing vouchers for farmers to purchase seed from local retailers. And a good example of supporting markets could be rebuilding community-based seed multipliers, or also expanding the network of seed retailers in an affected community and linking them to seed supply. And an example of market system change is these longer-term integrated activities that may be helping the whole chain from seed research to seed production, through the chain to wholesalers and retailers, along with training and information services to build the demand from farmers as well. So that is a very quick review of the framing we're going to use for today. There's much more explanation in the description in the paper itself, but I want us to have a lot of time in the groups, so I'm going to move us forward. If you have questions, clarifying questions on this, please put them in the chat. There's lots of people on this session who can answer, including me. And we might have time for just one quick question. If anyone has anything they really need clarified, you can raise your hand. If not, we will move into the breakout groups. I think we're okay. Okay, then I'm going to move us into the meat of what we want to do today. And as you can see from the screen, so we have a large group. I think, Ali, how many people do we have? We've got about 50 participants. So we are going to break into 7. I think we'll start with 7 groups and we'll consolidate if we need to. But what we've done is divided these breakout groups by those same levels that I just discussed, using, supporting, and changing. And we also have some groups. One important thing I forgot to mention earlier is that some of these interventions can actually go in different levels, right? So the classic example of using markets is vouchers for farmers to buy seed from retail shops. But if you also provide support to those retail shops to get the seeds from wholesalers, maybe they need some cash flow to keep going, and you give them information on the types of seeds farmers want, then that is adding more capacity into the system and the ability for longer term sustainable solutions. And so that becomes a supporting activity also. So apologies, I forgot to mention that, but that relates because what we're going to do in these groups is we've also added a couple of groups on these gray areas. So we've got groups that use, we've got groups that use/support that's going to talk about some of these interventions that go between the two. We have a group at support, and we have a group at support/change, and then a group at changing systems. What I want you to do is take a couple seconds to think about which of these levels you feel most comfortable in, where your expertise is, what you're most interested in discussing, because in a minute, we are going to ask you to select the breakout group you want. And we have 2 groups for use and support. So if your group has a lot of people in it, please go to the other one, and Allie will be available to help move you around as needed. What we're going to do in a minute is also put a link in the chat to a Google Doc that we are going to use to guide our discussion. And you will see at the top of that Google chat hyperlinks to the different breakout groups. So please select the hyperlink for your group, and that will take you to your part of the document. At the top of your section, you will see the guiding questions for this discussion, and a facilitator will help you work through them. And you will also see a couple of examples in tables like the green box on this screen. And though that's the guidance, the examples that you will discuss. And please, we want all of your feedback. So feel free to write anything you want into those tables. If there's things you don't understand, if there's things you want to add, you can also type in the note section at the bottom of each table, put any resources that you have that you think would be good, or anything that's confusing. If you have resources or you want to follow up, you have ideas that you want to talk about after this, I've also put a table at the top of the Google Doc for you to put your name and email address, and I will follow up with you. We hope you'll have a really robust discussion, and I know it's sometimes hard to type and talk at the same time. So this Google Doc will be available for at least a week after this session. So feel free, if you want to put a resource in later or you want to add more comments, you can get back in and add your information. So Allie, can you please put, yes, we have the Google Doc is in the chat. So please click on that and select your group. And Allie, can you open the breakout groups? Please, everybody, go to your breakout group.
Great. The rooms are open, and I will stay back if anyone needs anything here. I have 30 seconds.
Okay. Do we have people back in the main group?
Not quite, but it's always a good sign when they don't jump right back.
Yes.
Means there's good work going on. They'll all be back in about 10 seconds.
Okay, welcome back, everybody. I hope everybody is back from the breakout groups, and I hope you had some good discussions. We just have a few minutes to check in and see how the discussion was, but I know we got lots of written documentation on the Google Doc, so thank you. So if anyone has some big thoughts, please put them in the chat, but also maybe we start with, I'd be interested to see if any groups had any big takeaways or really shocking information. Maybe start facilitators. Do you have anything you want to share? Go ahead, Messeret.
Thank you, Sasha. So I was in the group number 6, which is about support, market actors, and system change. So there are 2 major things that stand out for me when we discuss. One is when we do whether it's support or systemic change, the advantage and disadvantage might vary when it's come to local varieties and improved varieties. So consider which advantage works for local varieties and improved varieties, the same for considerations and limitations. And the other thing that we discuss is when we do the system change, it's not only about seed, but it's all about like the whole agricultural system, the extension system, and everything. So there should be a way we consider it like as a whole, not only about seed. And we also talked about key considerations for when it's come to IDPs, because the land issue, the conflict, and the different context related issues really matter. So these are some of the things that we have discussed under our breakout session.
Those are really great points. And yes, the point on local varieties versus certified seeds is such an important one that often gets missed. So thank you for bringing that up, and the fact that seeds is just one element. Allison, do you want to chime in?
Yeah, sure. So our group was group 7. We were focused on market systems change. And some of the examples that we had were focused on things like working on improved seed research and information services, not just the seeds themselves, in order to have that holistic system. And one of the things that we noticed is even though there was a long list of different functions that we were working on, there were still some that were missing, like finance. But we also talked about how difficult it is to actually make these types of changes sustainable. So the examples really talk about who to work with, but the question is, in the context of fragile context, how can you work with them in such a way that when the funding ends, actually there's something that they want to continue carrying on and doing. So that was a challenge that we talked about. And we also talked about how there was an example there that was focused on coordination among aid actors. We talked about how humanitarian actors tend to do well at that, development actors less so. And it's important to have that coordination, but we also have to be careful that we're supporting the coordination of the local market actors who are going to be there after the programming ends. Those are some of our reflections.
Very good points. Thank you. Maybe quickly, I know we're running out of time. So Jeffrey, what did you have to share?
Yeah, thank you very much. I was with group 4 on supporting market actors, and we handle issues directly related to direct seed aid or rehabilitate seed market actors such as the Seed Lab and Research Institute. So one of the key issues that sticked out was about even if we support the market actors to deliver seed, are the seed users have the capacity to pay for seed? And we had a very exciting examples of how the seed actors, the seed users can be supported to pay for seed is to boost community saving such that they are able to have their own finances to ever prepay for seed in advance. That will motivate the stockists to restock the relevant seed varieties in time, and they are able to access the different seed varieties. But also what is very sticking on during the discussion is the price volatility. But okay, much as we support the market actors, how do we control the volatility of price during the period of planting? And also there was an example in West Africa about the timeliness of certification system to complement the quality of seed. And then in the second example, one key issue that was very critical was related to the government ability to support the policy gap, that the policy does not support community seed multiplication, and in this case, it hinders the ability of our example of rebuilding or develop community-based seed multiplication, but it was cited as an example to provide and offer available seed to seed users during crisis. Thank you.
Very good point, Jeffrey. I think, Carrie, I'm going to cut you off because I know we're short on time, but I want to let everybody know what happens next on this. First of all, thank you very much for your time and all of your input. It will be very helpful. What we are going to do from ISSD Africa, first of all, we will send out the deck to you and the recording very soon. And we will be finishing this publication in the next month or two, and we will also send it out to all of you. And I will be following up with people who have other thoughts for this publication. On the RSRI side, we are going to explore if there really is enough to the point about what's different for refugees and displaced populations to maybe produce a short companion document to this, talking about how to do seed aid. for refugees. And I dropped into some conversations. I know there was a lot of talk about land access. So it seems like there may be some important points there. But so please don't forget, you have time to go back into the Google document if there are more things you want to add, those gaps that you found, if you have suggestions, if you have resources, or put your name and email into that table if you've got a specific topic you want to follow up with me on, and I will get a hold of you. So thank you very much for your time. I appreciate this. And we will be following up with more information soon. Have a very nice morning, evening, everybody, and thanks a lot. Bye-bye.